Hello, product people. Welcome to the Product for Product podcast, hosted by Matt Green, data advocate and product manager, and Moshe Mikanovsky, product leader and author. Our goal is to serve the product community by helping you find products that can help make your work in product management easier. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Product for Product podcast.
Thanks for tuning in this week. We're excited to have Rommil Santiago on the show to help us kick off our new series on experimentation. Welcome to the show, Rommil. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Rommil.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rommil. I'm the product lead for experimentation and personalization over at Lablaw Digital, and I'm also the founder of Experimentation. We feature experimenters from around the world, and we have conversations with them, just kind of like this.
Perfect. And for our audience, this is a bit unusual episode for us because usually it's just Matt and I talking about the products that we're going to talk about or about the theme of the product. And in this one is experimentation with A/B testing. Here we decided to invite Rommil because he is an expert in this, and you should check out his Experimentation Nation, the website and all the resources over there. It's really awesome. They had an online
Conference.
They had an online conference.
We had a really cool guest too, if you remember. It rhymes with Moshe.
Yeah.
Yes, I was on it too.
Thank you for that, by the way.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure.
And we Matt and we're not actually. I don't think Matt, you're as well using an A/B testing tool these days. I'm not using an A/B testing tool.
No, I'm not.
I used some time ago, probably 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. I used Optimizely, and it was really cool. I actually had to choose a product to do A/B testing, where I was working at points, and this was more for the marketing messages that we would put inside the pages of our application. So our application was a product, of course, but we didn't really test the product itself, like, how the product behave and stuff like that. We more tested like campaigns of messages inside the product. So we had these banners that we were able to put inside the product, and we needed to change different type of banners. So we wanted to test those. So back then, that was the first time that I learned about this type of product. And I looked into different ones. And in general, A/B testing is that you have different options. You don't really know which one will work the best. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Rommil, with my explanation.
Yeah.
I don't know which one worked the best, so I present one option to one group of people, another option to another group of people, and then statistically I see which one behaves better, what is the results for each one of them, and then I go with that one. Does that explain it correctly?
I think at a high level, you have that right, where essentially you present an experience to different segments, right? So you have a control experience and a variant experience. And what you're doing here is you're trying to measure the difference in the outcome. So you're just trying to measure whether the two experiences produce different outcomes for users. So at a high level, that's you got it.
And sometimes I remember also that we had more than two. So we looked at products that will provide A, B, and C, and D, etc. So It's not always just A and B.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's lots of ways to run experiments. Those are definitely the most common ones.
And I think I at first was aware of A/B testing with Facebook. I think their developers are even allowed to run their own experiments, and so you could have many, many different experiences across a platform.
Yes. And that was at the time that you were still using Facebook?
Yeah, correct. Yes. Yeah, I no longer use it.
I know. But the cool thing about it also, and from your perspective, Matt, is that at the back end, it collects all of this data and creates analytics with statistical proof for which of those options is actually the better one.
That's why this is so cool to me, because there's a data science analytics aspect to all this, which is, more my background. So that's why this whole space is really cool.
Yeah. So how did you get to do this, Rommil? How long have you been doing it, and how did you get to that?
That is a great question, without making myself feel really old.
Oh, don't worry.
I've been doing this since around 2008, 2009, about. So the way I started out into this was I was a analytics consultant, so web analytics, and I was consulting clients on how to implement Adobe Analytics, Google Analytics, Omniture, stuff like that. And Test and Target was a new product from Adobe, and they're like, give this a shot, try it with your clients. And I tried it out on one client, and I thought it was really cool. We had this really interesting experiment working with the Canadian Royal Mint. They make coins for Canada, and they were just trying to sell more coins. That just sounds weird. It's they're selling money for money, but anyway. So they had product description pages, and they wanted to figure out the most optimum layout. So we ran some A/B tests for them, and we were able to produce a 25% lift. And I was like, okay, whoa, this has power. Analytics has power. Analytics is cool. We're able to find all these insights. But you should see when you make money for a client, that is some next level stuff. And I'm like, this is really cool. This is something I need to start getting into. So yeah, definitely over 10 years now.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I wasn't always leading experimentation. I went to analytics, product, marketing, e-com. I bounced around, but the common thread in all those roles was experimentation and some form of growth, which leverages experimentation. So yeah, that's where it started.
Yeah. And one of the core things as a product manager, and for all us product managers, one of the core things about experimentation is that we should not really fall in love with a solution and think, oh, that's the best solution ever because our gut feels that, or because that's what we like, or whatever. We should only fall in love with the problem, and then we have to put hypotheses out there to decide, to see, okay, would this solution actually solve this problem for the users? And the only way to know that is by testing it, and experimentation is one of the way to test it. So you could test it, put it in front of users, but then and get their response. But this is more of qualitative data that in the long run, it's very hard to collect a lot of data. And with the tools like A/B testing tools, you could do it with a lot of users, given, of course, that you have lots of users. And and then you can also provide them with more than one option. We can provide them with several options at a time. But on the other end, and this goes more towards these tools and how they behave. One of my worries all the time, is, do the developers have to go and develop each one of these options in order to put them in front of the users? How does that work?
So it depends on the kind of tool you're using. Because there's many ways to do A/B testing. You can do backend testing, front-end testing. So it really depends on how deep you want to go. So in some companies, they only A/B test on, kind of like marketing treatments, campaigns, stuff that the marketing team or a marketing growth team can handle. Other companies go deeper and they A/B test features in a product itself. So if you want to go into like the deep feature stuff, yeah, developers are going to have to develop code, bake it into the product, well, potentially. And the A/B testing platform will flip back and forth, typically using some sort of feature flag or what have you. In some places, you can leverage tools, WYSIWYG interfaces. So it's kind of like a drag and drop. I'm going to move this button here, add some CSS, add some JavaScript. But we all know that the problem there is if a non-developer does that, so not to knock our marketing friends because they're amazing, but if a non-dev person does that, there's a good chance you're risking the stability of your product. So there should be this communication of what's the code that's going to be injected and having that QA'd. Regardless of that conflict, you definitely can do development of test experiences without development resources. Yeah, so it really does span the gamut. You're either getting your developers to develop full-fledged things that get toggled, or you do WYSIWYG interfaces where you just drag and drop elements of a page, but there's risks involved with that.
And that was the only experience I had with the WYSIWYG type of testing. And like I said, it was all marketing, so it didn't have any, JavaScript or backend stuff. So it was just what converts more. And that's also sometimes when I speak with other CROs, and I don't know if we said before what is a CRO, but I believe it's a conversion rate optimizer.
Yeah, right? That's it. And that term is even contentious because a lot of CROs feel that just kind of minimizes what they do. It's like they look at getting more clicks on a button, but yes. A CRO thinks about the full journey, very similarly to a product manager, really, but not as in depth.
And that's actually a very good point, because I also thought that this is a bit limiting to what experimentation person does. And it's also, to me, geared more towards marketing,
yes,
rather than the product itself. So sometimes when I talk with other CROs, I'm asking them, are you doing the optimization of the marketing website, or are you doing the optimization of the actual product that the company is selling?
It leans more towards the marketing side for sure. And some CROs are blessed that they have developers and they could go deeper. But for the most CROs that I've interviewed and I've met, it's largely on the marketing side.
Right. And why do you think is that? Is it because it's easier, or because there was more push towards like bring the people in to buy, and after that we just forget about them and give them whatever product that we have?
I don't necessarily think it's easier. I think it's just different. CROs, a lot of them are agencies, a lot of them are contractors type, you'll see a good percentage of them. And, it's much harder to team them up with a dev team. So I think that there's some sort of kind of bias there where just the nature of the job lends itself more to marketing type work. Yeah. And I find that marketing has to react more to the environment faster than a product does. It depends on your product, obviously, but you have roadmaps that you have to deal with. So it's just the faster nature, the availability of the talent. I find it's a better fit for marketing type work, but that doesn't necessarily mean it should be only there.
Like who owns the A/B testing experimentation work around? Because I'm thinking about if a development team is putting these tests out there, who's signing off on them? Who's overseeing like, hey, this is working, this is not. Like instead of just having people just run around doing, I'm just going to test something.
Usually. I'm going to say usually with a lot of asterisks, is because again, it's different in different places, but usually the CRO has some sort of oversight over that. But oftentimes they are kind of like, okay, this is what was run, this is what we run. And they just run a lot of comms or communications between the different stakeholders, like the sponsor, the development team, the engineering team, the marketing team. Sometimes they may not have that high level authority to coordinate and operate and just say what has to be done. And they'll just have to sell it constantly and get approvals. So that you have two sides of the spectrum. Where I am at Lablaw Digital, we definitely operate, we support, we analyze. But at the end of the day, we are consultants. We don't own the experiment per se. We'll help you construct it, design it, run it, everything. But you are ultimately, our client / product manager, whoever, are ultimately responsible for this test. We're just your best friend, keep you out of trouble.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, the person who kicks off this experiment is going to own it. So it really depends.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So if I would be the product manager in that situation, I would come up with different options for solutions and hypotheses for them. And then based on that, define what type of things I want to test. And with your partnership, I would, nail down the different experiments, and then you will help me define how to run those experiments. Or
that's usually the workflow for someone who's pretty experienced at this. Often at times we will be presented with, we want to test this, and we have to hit the brakes and go, okay, what's the question you're trying to answer? Because at the end of the day, experimentation is about learning.
So help also set up these
exactly
hypotheses.
Yeah, because what happens usually, and this always happens when a product manager presents different solutions, what does that kind of say is that they're in love with their solutions. And sometimes their solutions may not answer the question they're trying to answer. So we poke hard. Is this the right question to answer? Is this the right metric to pay attention to? Because maybe the metric you're trying to move doesn't matter. Maybe it isn't aligned with the rest of the success of the company. Maybe it's conflicting with the goals of another product manager. And someone in my role, that's our responsibility to go, you're testing against add to carts and you're testing against user satisfaction and what have you. And we're like, your work is counter to each other. We may want to align this or have a higher level metric, a core metric, an overall evaluation criteria type thing that aligns everyone's work together.
So it really also goes to the objectives that we're trying to do and align the objectives. And once we align them, we could see what the effect that one experiment could be on one objective and another on another objective, and then whether they're in sync or not.
Yeah. And, like people, when we have so many product managers working on different things, sometimes the goals kind of conflict, and then it's never on purpose, but sometimes as you build things, you're going, oh, this has a negative impact on that. And an experiment can call something like that out. Like maybe you find that one experiment is actually hurting another's performance, and having a CRO or an experimentation lead or some sort of oversight to really monitor these type of things is great, because this way we could hit the brakes and go, okay, your work is hurting each other. Let's try to align that. Even
thinking about having a community of like, hey, we had a hypothesis, we tested it, it didn't work out, but having a collective mind when it comes to this kind of testing. Say, okay, we tried this in the past, it didn't work. Maybe we go revisit it and find out why. But that way you're not repeating the test over and over. Exactly. And that's the kind of the soft part of experimentation that's often overlooked. We talk about tools, we talk about how to run an experiment, but the part that's missing is, and no one loves it unless you're weird, is documentation and communication. It's like, unless your learnings are communicated to your other product managers or documented so that when someone leaves, someone can find it, you're going to end up running the same test again. You know, or missing an opportunity. Maybe they learned something that affects your area, and you're like, holy crap, that works. Let's double down on that.
Yeah. And actually, that's a great segue to the next section that I wanted to start talking a bit about what to expect or what to look for in this type of tools. And maybe my first question about that would be, do the A/B testing tools out there make this type of soft skill or soft need available? Are they almost like a central depository of all the different experiments and communication and collaboration between people in the organization?
Let me see. I've only had experience with a handful of tools. I've heard of a whole bunch of others because we're obviously auditing our tools constantly. Like, is this the right one? I know when I say this sentence, some vendor is going to reach out to you folks, but I think that there's not a tool out there that is complete end-to-end for experimentation, like with the repository, the communication, and the A/B testing, and the statistical inference, and the goal, like all that stuff together. I have not seen it. And if one were to exist, I don't know if every part of that puzzle would be good, because every company is a little different. From a statistical perspective, some like one form of statistics or another. You know, there's different reasons for taking different approaches, like Frequentist or Bayesian or what have you. That alone will it'll bifurcate your choices. Like you'll have Frequentist choices and Bayesian choices. So already you're kind of split there. And then who owns the data? Can you get the data out? Because just because you have an A/B test and one performs better in one metric, just due diligence means you need to dig down into what are the other impacts and what are the other downstream effects of this particular experience. You'll need to dig into analytics, right? So how does that test data integrate with your analytics data? And some packages are better and or worse in that regard. And then you have the repository, because I've yet to see anyone record or document experimental data the way that my company needs. So you have to think, okay, you do document it, but not in the way I want. Can I customize that? Can I export that? So yeah, in my opinion, I don't think any company does it perfectly end to end, but I think that's absolutely okay. I'm a big fan of kind of like finding the best solution for each thing and finding a good integration between them.
That's really interesting, and I hope that maybe one company will reach out to us when they hear this and tell us, no, we have all of that, and we see that. But you mentioned a lot of things in there that maybe we want to go a bit deeper into, like the statistical stuff. You mentioned a couple of ways to do the statistical analytics on this. Yep. Can you tell us a bit about more? Because I think I didn't really understand what you were saying there. And
no, it's all good. I hardly understand anything I say.
So just to explain these two methods a bit more, what do they mean? And maybe if you have an example, you can tell us a bit more with a specific example.
So everything I say, I put an asterisk on. I'm not a stats professor. I am just, I use it in my job. I have a decent grasp of it. So perfect. Just a legal disclaimer there.
No worries. And actually, real life experience, I think, is better than academia. So exactly.
In my understanding, there are basically three camps in statistics for A/B testing, by the way. Statistics is this enormous thing. You could do a degree in it. A/B testing in our world, the business world, product world, the choices are it's a lower, less options, fewer options. So the first one is frequentist, and that's the classic one that you've probably learned in school. If you hear things like p-value, confidence, significance, those kind of words, you're in the frequentist camp. So that's essentially the belief that there is one true metric that represents your population, and you're trying to kind of figure out what range captures that true value most of the time. And that's kind of a weird description, but the idea, the core of it, is that you believe that there's one true answer for your experience. In Bayesian, it's more about belief of the world and probabilities. So it's not one true number, it's a range of numbers. Depending on this and that, depending on your environment, the number of your the KPI or the number of your experience can change. So it's going to be a range of numbers, and your solution here is trying to capture most of those numbers. So there's more differences. I can dig into it. Stop me if anything gets confusing, because I'm confusing myself. I'm trying to think what other differences. In frequentist, you don't care about prior history. It is like this version versus this version. We're going to collect a number of samples until we're able to confidently say that this number represents the world, and there's only a certain percentage chance that I will be wrong. While Bayesian, it's more about, this is a probability, and it measures risk. Like, what are the chances that I'm wrong? So one's more gambling, and the other one's more about like trying not to be wrong. And these are very subtle differences. 100%, they're all valid, obviously. But in my personal opinion, the frequentist approach is more conservative. It's much, in my opinion, harder to describe because of these weird null hypothesis type things. While Bayesian is kind of like, if you believe something about the world, that belief forms your opinion about the future. And that's a little bit easier to explain. That's frequentist and Bayesian. And then you have something called sequential, which is kind of like what Optimizely would use, if you've seen that before. And that's kind of like a hybrid of the two, where frequentist requires you to have a sample size and you must hit that sample size. Bayesian doesn't have a sample size requirement. Sequential has no sample size requirement, and you could stop the test at any time, but it uses frequentist math. So that's kind of like in between the two camps, the sequential. And I realized that was kind of a weird way to explain it. I'm not a statistician, but happy to clarify anything I just said.
No worries. I think part of these things is really to experience it in real life.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about, now I have a hard time even to pronounce these names, but was it Bayesian? Okay. So this one sounds really familiar to me from time that I spent in a startup working in AI. So building an AI system. Yeah. Because the scientist over there would constantly try to reduce the risks and try to increase the probability for something to be correct. And that's felt exactly like what you were describing.
I find Bayesian, and I know there's going to be our listeners are going to like, Bayesian sucks. Trust me, I ran right into that. But from my personal perspective, I find Bayesian is a better fit for product managers. So like when you do a drug study, or vaccine study or what have you, they definitely don't do Bayesian, they do frequentist. They do a lot of sampling, and they try to rule out false positives and false negatives because like that's really not what you want for a vaccine. False positives and false negatives, something that is true and it's not true, or something that's false and it's actually not false. But Bayesian is more about probabilities, as you mentioned. And when you're building product, you could be in any phase of the product, early stage, late, ramping up, maturity, however you want to describe that path. And often at times you need a good enough answer, like which direction do I go? What has the higher probability of being better? And Bayesian helps you do that in a shorter time frame. So instead of having to wait like 6 weeks for a result, you can wait maybe 3 or 2 or depending on how risky you want to get. But Bayesian gives you that option A is less risky than option B. And as a product manager, like I like less risk, so I'll go there and I'll iterate from there.
That's what we're all about, reducing risk at the end of the day, because those systems are quite complex, and the persona of people using it is so different sometimes that you can't really aim for everyone. So you're trying to aim for the largest group or to create that product market fit. So what should we look for in product? So we're going to talk in the next few episodes with product managers or CROs that are using and have experience with specific products. And by all means, you can throw some names out there. That's fine. This episode is about it's open, and you don't have to tell us which one you prefer. If you want, you can. But like, what are the products that are out there, and then what should we, as a product manager, what should I look for in these type of products?
Oh, so such a loaded question. So okay, I'm going to talk about what I know is out there, and yeah, let's go from there. So there's, depending on your product, obviously, there's Google Optimize. That is a free tool, and a lot of people start there, particularly on web products. Not so much mobile or apps, but if your product's a web-related product and it's mostly front-end, usually Google Optimize is good. That is a Bayesian engine, fairly simple to implement, fairly pain in the butt to dig into the data because your data is in Google Optimize, and it's not the simplest to connect to Google Analytics for whatever reason. I know it's possible, but it's not like click, you're there. So that part's kind of frustrating about Google Optimize, but it is a free way to get into it. They definitely have different versions of it, like the 360 version of Google Optimize, which allows you to target audiences from different Google products. And by audiences, I mean you want to target like new users or existing users. By stratifying like that, you clean up your signal. So let's say you only look at new users, then you know that your experiment will generate a learning applicable to new users. When you mix the two audiences together, then they could cancel each other out and hide some signal. So that is definitely a great way to shorten the time an experiment runs by running on a single audience or segment, what have you. So that's the first one.
And the segmentation over there will be done using Google Analytics?
Yeah, but that's for like if you had the 360 paid 360 thing. The free version, it's fairly limited in your audience thing. I don't even know if you can audience. I don't have deep experience there, but as far as I know, they don't. The next one, so going from the free to the ultra expensive. Sorry guys, they hear this. It's the Adobe Target. So if you know Adobe Analytics, they're an enterprise level analytics platform or solution. They also have Adobe Target, which is an A/B testing / personalization tool. That's a lot more flexible. You can use audiences from their audience manager solution. You can not only do, I forgot to mention, Google Optimize, it's WYSIWYG. Unless you get creative and jam in JavaScript that way, but it's mostly WYSIWYG type thing. Adobe Target, it's all that. It's got the WYSIWYG, you could throw in feature flags, you throw in HTML. You really could deliver anything through their solution, use their analytics solution to deep dive. But the problem is it's really expensive. It's enterprise level. And if you have a single page application, integration can get finicky because every SPA is a little bit different. So to ensure that the experiences are delivering properly, it's a bit challenging. But if you have the money and you have the resources to maintain the integration implementation, it's a very strong solution. So those are the two juggernauts. The next levels are like your VWOs, which is a Bayesian version, similar to Google Optimize, a little bit more powerful. Then you have Chameleon, which is, again, I think they use AI in their solution. So that's another one. And I know I'm missing a big one.
Optimizely?
Optimizely. Holy cow. Yes. Optimizely is, as I mentioned, it doesn't do Frequentist or Bayesian. It does Sequential. So it's kind of like this hybrid. Fairly good. It's gotten to the price levels of Adobe Target. So you're not really saving, even though you'd think with a smaller-ish company, you use a cheaper solution, but it's not that much cheaper. And you'll have the problem of integration of analytics because they don't do analytics. You got to figure out how to patch that together. But if you have your own GCP instance or analytics, what have you on your own, I'm fairly sure you can patch that together. Those are the solutions I know. Which one do I like? I like if you're beginning. If you're beginning in this whole field, Google Optimize is a great place to start. Is it perfect? No, but it's free. So what harm can it do? If you're building really, really complex products, I mean, we use Adobe Target at Lablaw Digital. Is it perfect? No. Does it work? Yeah. You know, and you'll hear people poo-poo on it all the time, but it's like all the platforms will have issues, and that's expected. Like our products are unique; they didn't exist before, so we can't expect all these tools to
do it all.
Exactly. So that's my recommendation. If you're a really big enterprise, at least explore it, that or Optimizely. And there's a couple of interesting startups out there. BSmarty is a good one to check out. And
BSmarty, we're going to talk with
Jonas?
AB Tasty.
AB Tasty is a different one. Yeah, they're headquartered.
Oh, so there is AB Smarty and AB Tasty.
Yeah, AB Tasty, I think, is headquartered in France, and they have an office opening in Montreal. I don't know much about them, to be honest. We kind of talked to them at an early on stage at one of my companies, but we already had an existing relationship with Optimizely, so we just re-signed with them.
Right.
So there's AB Tasty and BSmarty. Sounds very similar. BSmarty is by Jonas Alves. So he's the guy behind Booking.com's experimentation platform. Okay. So it is definitely, it's a new platform, but that team knows how to build an A/B testing product. So they're worth chatting with.
So when you're looking for a product, you probably need to know the approach you want to take from a scientific research method. It sounds like, since they can't do it all, I guess they don't all have everything. So, you kind of want to identify the path you want to take.
The things you need to definitely consider is implementation. Do you have the dev resources to implement the thing? And do you have stats firepower? If you have a statistical design of experiment person in-house, that is definitely something to take into consideration, because some options like Optimizely and Google Optimize, they will do the math for you and you don't have to worry.
Yeah, okay.
Adobe Target also does Frequentist math, but it doesn't do Bayesian math. So we're at Lablaw Digital, we're kind of this hybrid where we use their tool to deliver, but we use our own internal tools to evaluate. So you need to consider your stats level.
Perfect.
Yeah. You also mentioned before something about Frontend and Backend. And I think one of the reasons that Optimizely actually became more expensive, and I spoke with them last year because I was looking at feature flag functionality, and they have this free feature flag suite that at the time, I don't know if now it's still the same thing. They offer it for free for everyone, but that was their way probably to get people onto their platform. Yeah. And they told me their prices for their full platform, and I was like, oh, that's way more expensive than I remember. But then they said, yes, we now also support backend. Yeah. So what does these front-end versus backend means?
So when you do a back-end integration, you're delivering less to the client. What happens often with a front-end solution is that they're delivering all the variations to the client, and then you have some decisioning engine to show only one. So that's wasted bandwidth, wasted computational time, and it's harder to connect with a backend system like a CRM or CDP, what have you. With a backend, you can speed up all that communication and only deliver the information or payload to the client that you need to. So it's a much faster experience, but it's much harder to coordinate with behavioral analytics. It's like the stuff that happens on the website, connecting it with the backend analytics, backend testing, A/B testing tool, that gets a little bit more finicky. But yeah, the future really is backend testing, because we definitely want to be testing more backend features. Like we've killed the hell out of the front end. We need to start testing the backend.
Oh, so this will be more heavy with the developers, not
100%. It is a lot harder to do backend, and yeah, you can do feature flagging, sure, but I guarantee you'll run into something.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so you mentioned a few products, and actually I was looking at my LinkedIn because I did the survey recently because I'm looking for guests, and that was one of the reasons to do the survey about which A/B testing product they're using, and I got almost 100 people, so I guess it's statistically okay. I only, LinkedIn only give you the option to put 3 products and then other. So I put Optimizely, VWO, and Google Optimize. I'm not sure why I chose these 3, maybe because that was the first that came to my mind. But I had 34% voting for Google Optimize, and then 25% for Optimizely, and 10% for VWO, and then 32% for other. So that's with the other, I started connecting with a few of them, and they told me about different products like A/B testing, and they told me about Adobe Target. A few other that came up was Unbounce, Dynamic Yield.
Yes.
And Flipper.
Okay, that one was new to me.
Yeah.
So Unbounce is good for marketing. So it's an A/B testing tool for landing pages that they host.
Okay.
So if you don't have the ability, and this is a situation I've been in where you can't get any development at all at your company, and you're trying to A/B test landing pages, Unbounce is a great tool where you could build the page on their site, do the A/B split on their side. I mean, there's some limitations in the breakpoints, like how does it going to look like on web versus mobile and stuff like that. But definitely a Canadian company, pretty cool. Dynamic Yield is, I think they're owned by McDonald's now. So I don't know if you have issues with that, but they're closer, they're stronger. I like McDonald's, but I get the anger. Yeah. Dynamic Yield is much stronger at personalization than anything, in my opinion. But they're solid. I never heard of Flipper before.
Flipper. And then someone also mentioned they're using Zoho pages. I know Zoho is doing a lot of the different things. I didn't know that they have an A/B testing specific.
Yeah, I don't know if. I mean, it's fine. It probably works. It just, I don't know if that's one I'd ever considered ever. So I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, and it's called Zoho Page Sense, something like that. Huh. And then I used in the past Appendo, of course, and other in-app messaging tools. And I think I mentioned it in the beginning of this episode that they have their own kind of A/B testing functionality, but these are usually just towards the in-app messaging. So you can do different tests with different cohorts, and usually they randomize it and then they give you the feedback for that. So that's pretty cool that companies or products that have abilities to add more onto your product can actually do that as well. But that's not their core functionality. Yeah. So I won't consider them an A/B testing product.
It's nice to have. If you're not focused on that particular channel, it's nice to have something that does A/B testing in your messaging. But
yeah. So just maybe one final question: what other, if you would have to list the key features that we should look for in an A/B testing, and when we talk with our guests, what are the things we should go over? You mentioned statistical
approach for sure.
We mentioned Frontend and Backend. You mentioned the WYSIG. What other stuff?
How it integrates with analytics. That's going to be very.
It always come up whether I like it or not, because
and at the end of the day, how easily is it to take that data out and integrate it with your analytics? And that is like for me one of the top features to look at. And the next one is integration. I mean, integration is like one word, but it's how many sprints is that? Yeah. You need to find, in my opinion, you need to find a service provider that is going to give you that technical support. If you're building some really fancy stuff, their standard documentation may not cover it. So you have to have a great relationship with this vendor. Make sure they have technical support to give you answers quick, because what often happens is they'll support you in the setup. Hey, everything's working, but then you have a large test that's going out, or you're doing a rollout of a feature and with a holdback of some sort, and there's marketing tied to it, and it's like, this has to go out today. And something breaks. If you can't get a hold of these folks to get things sorted out, then you're in deep. I'm not going to swear, but it's not deep trouble. Yes. So customer support, tech support, another big one. The rest, to be honest, I don't really. Yeah. If they have front end integration, great. If they have back end integration, that's a plus. But I don't even know if they need to be the same solution, to be honest. You could have two solutions in both. As long as they both tie into your analytics, then you're gold. Yeah, those are the top ones. Like they'll sell you on WYSIWYG, right? Yes. But how many arguments are you going to have between developers and marketing on WYSIWYG solutions? So is that worth your trouble? I mean, maybe. But to me, that's like a lower level priority.
Oh, interesting. And we always ask, no matter which product we're talking about, we ask about the company behind it and the responsiveness. But it's really good point that you mentioned about when you go live and you need something really, really quick, and it's urgent. So that's a good point.
Yeah, I've worked with many companies and they're not all at the same level. Let's just put it that way.
Of course, we see it everywhere.
We'll talk after.
And we never really touch on pricing, although pricing is important for many people, but that's not one of those things that we usually touch on. Usually these days, it's easy to go to these websites and find out what they're pricing. And also they change the pricing all the time.
Yeah.
So it's more, I mean, they change their functionality all the time. That's true. They will add more things, but
and they'll change their pricing based on the new functionality. And
right.
Like year over year, like, oh, we're not basing it on page views now. We're doing it by users, and it changes all the time.
So we'll see what we'll come up with in the next few episodes, and then the wrap up episode about the things that we learn. And I'm really excited to learn about these products.
Yeah, it's a cool space.
Yeah,
it's got the word analytics in it, so Moshe, I'm excited about it. So.
Exactly. No, the analytics is actually really cool. From what I remember, the way that they presented it, and they would also be able to tell you when it's actually statistically accurate or not, and what is the range of error in the statistical accuracy, and stuff like that. And then they will tell you this one we think is going to be the winner and not. And so
the one thing I would just quickly inject there.
Yes.
Is that the tool may report you something. Let's say you're using a Frequentist perspective, like Adobe Target. You should clarify that. Just because they say it's statistically significant, doesn't mean it's meaningfully significant. You have to hit sample size, and many tools don't talk about sample size in the reporting if you've met it or not. So like you have statistical significance, and you have all these great green lights, but unless you hit sample, that's meaningless. So you have to have that kind of conversation of like, what about sample size? Is this winner really a winner? Have we hit all the conditions? For something like Google Optimize, the winner is the winner because it's fairly conservative. But other tools, you have to make sure like sample size is hit.
That's a good point, and I hope that we will do it justice when we interview our guests. Or maybe we'll have to invite you for each one of those episodes, Rommil. Be our guest host.
Clarifications.
Yeah. Here's some harder questions.
Yeah. Well, that's why having a data scientist probably on board would be so beneficial, because at the end of the day, you can make a change. You could go based upon some output that it says, "Oh, do this change here," and you'll gain new users, and you can make a mistake very easily with statistics.
I've never felt. I'm so appreciative of my statistics / data science friends. They make me feel supported and stupid at the same time, which is interesting. But thank gosh for them.
I feel exactly the same. When I worked with this group, it was amazing. I felt so like, oh my God, I'm really stupid. It's like there are so many smart people out there that I enjoy every minute of it because I learned so much from them. And that's where I'm thinking now back to my experience with Optimizely, that to me was like, yeah, they told me this test won, so I'm happy with that. But like you were saying, does it really?
Yeah, there's so many factors in it, and I'm not going to dive too deep, but there's that sample size part. And did you design the experiment well? They can tell you like mechanically results, right? But if the design isn't right, like let's say your audience isn't representative of your population, or if there's kind of like it's dirty and the two experiences are mixing together, or it's being influenced by upstream tests or upstream events, like you need to design this experiment properly so that you can trust those results. And that's usually where people falter, where they see a win or they see a loss or they see whatever, and the design of the experiment was wrong. So their learning is wrong. Yes. So that's where you need that data science or experimental person who's experiencing this to like look at it and go, yeah, you can trust these results.
Yeah, this is gold for every product manager out there, because I'm sure that many of you feel like me. If you don't have a CRO or a scientist that will actually help you decipher this information and make sure that you do it the right way, that's amazing. And I hope every product manager listen to this episode.
For your sake, yeah, I do too.
Also for theirs, so for everyone.
For sure.
For everyone's. Well, Rommil, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is a really exciting space, and especially like I said, with analytics involved, I'm always perked up by it. So, and where best can people reach you?
Yeah, you can Google Rommil Santiago, and I think there's only one of me. But if you really, otherwise, you can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect and chat. You can also find me at experimentation.com. I founded that, and we have a contact form, and I'm very easy to find.
And the amazing thing about Rommil with Experimentation is that he brings so many people from the community to talk over there that it's almost, you don't even feel Rommil over there. It's like the entire community is talking. So
thank you for that.
Yeah, no, this is really amazing of you that you bring so many voices from many different in the world and all type of people, the diversity. So it's very cool. I learned a lot from that community, the way you run it, and also from the content over there. And I know that I would not have known about experimentation as much as I do these days, and I still have a lot to learn without being part of that community. So thank you for that.
It's a great community. They're very welcoming. They're very open. No BS. And we try to like filter out any elite feeling, like I'm not as good as this person. No, like if you have questions, there's a bunch of people that are going to answer you. So yeah.
Well, excellent. It's been a pleasure, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Rommil, for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Have a good one.